All right, we're ready.
You stop.
We're ready. We're on. Come on.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nerds of Legend for our next episode of the Bookcast. Today, we're talking about a particular book. I'm going to have Joel this time, since he's the most familiar with it, give the book's title and give his own brief synopsis.
The book title is Terry Pratchett's Color of Night.
Magic.
And pardon?
Color of Magic.
Right. Color of Magic. Wrong thing. Color of Magic. And it takes place in Ankh-Morpork, the largest city in the Circle Sea, based on the back of a giant spacefaring sea turtle, the Great Atuan. And it follows the adventures of a wizard of sorts named Rincewind, and his being commanded to be a good guide to the only tourist on the disc, Two Flower.
Who is also an insurance clerk.
Who's also, well, he never said flat out it was an insurance clerk. He said he was a clerk of, and then the thing I love the most is like the weird ways that they kept saying it was insurance.
Yeah.
But like
Insure ants.
Insure ants. Yeah, but spelled INSUREANTS. So
Yeah. Also,
because nobody in Ankh-Morpork had any idea of what that was about.
Also, I think I saw in sewer, like poo-poo sewer, ants.
And then when he studied the field of, what did they say? Underground echoing small people or something like that, where they kept saying over and over, which was Echo Gnome Hicks. Or economics, like it never flat out said it. I actually had to go to Google to figure that out. But it was and it would say a bunch of different ways, resounding shouts of underground small people and things like that. But Terry Pratchett has a wonderful play on words. But Two Flower wanted to see the world and save up what he thought was a small amount of money, which turned out to be, for Ankh-Morporkian money, an astronomical fortune.
Yeah. It's basically like the worth of, they said it was like the worth of Ankh-Morpork like 3 times over or something like that.
Because he was paying for what was called, he was paying for his services with something called a Rhinu, which was the currency of where he was from. I think it's like the Archelian Empire. And he comes from the Counterweight continent, which is heavy in gold as a common metal, as well as something called octo-iron. But it weighs the same as all the other land masses on the disc to keep it balanced on the back of the 4 elephants that ride on top of the Great Atuan.
It's
and he paid for his room with 2 coins that each one was worth more than the entire establishment that he was staying in.
Yeah.
So, because of it, him throwing around this wealth rather blithely with no idea of what was going on, new guilds popped up. One of the thieves' guilds decided to come up with a department of tourism that was created at like 4:45 in the afternoon of the day Two Flower arrived.
Yeah.
So, the whole story is a long and short version of trying to separate him from his money and them stumbling from one adventure to another, including finding a floating mountain, a demon that if you say the number 8 will summon it and he will eat your soul. And
also, don't forget Hrun the Barbarian.
Yeah, Hrun the Barbarian, which was played brilliantly in the Amazon Prime film by, I could not remember the actor, but he kept talking about how if he gets money, he's going to buy himself teeth, because nothing's more embarrassing than being toothless.
Yeah. Well, because is it the one in the Discworld series was a really old guy, right? In the show. Yeah.
My wife is shouting that it's the same actor that plays Argus Filch.
Ah, yeah, that's right. I forgot.
He's very versatile. I think he's wonderful, but...
So wait, you not only got her to read the book, you got her to watch the show?
No, she read the book.
Oh, okay.
I watched the movie. I finished the book, and it's mostly because Terry Pratchett did a wonderful job of running the story up until they get to Krull, right to the rim of the world. Then it takes this kind of like... I don't know. It was this very disjointed bit of imagery that kind of seemed to jump around. And
he hit his word count and was trying to wrap things up. I think is kind of what happened.
It got real rushed at the end of it.
Yeah.
But all I know is at the end, somehow they're in spacesuits jumping off to check out the sex of the turtle.
Should we give, just real quick, should we give a little bit of background on Discworld before we, like, the whole sort of universe?
Keep in mind that right now we're still in spoiler-free territory.
Yes. So, basically, Discworld is a novel series created by the great Sir Terry Pratchett, starting in sometime in the 70s. He was basically, it's a world that's set on it's a magical world set on a disc that is balanced atop the back of 4 giant elephants that are standing atop the back of a giant cosmic sea turtle that is hurtling through space.
For those of you Stephen King fans, it's kind of like the giant turtle that basically spawns the universe in that particular...
Yeah. So, pretty much, there's all kinds of weird physics things that he does to explain things. It's kind of like, if anyone is familiar, it's basically... Discworld is to fantasy what Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is to sci-fi. So what Terry Pratchett was doing with a lot of this was basically making a satire of a lot of common fantasy elements and poking fun at them and using them to, like, refer to current events and also certain, like, poke fun at certain, like, common principles by making this very outlandish world that has all kinds of monsters and magic and just ridiculous nonsense that happens. So there's roughly, I think there's 27 novels.
I believe there's significantly more, but there's a bunch of
There's
them.
also a bunch of short stories, but there's no, like, perfect place to start in the world. All the books kind of, like, there's, like, 7 individual series within the universe. But Color of Magic is the first Discworld novel, and it's usually the place that most people recommend you to start. So,
By the way, there are 41 novels.
Ah, thank you. And also multiple graphic novels and short stories as well. So, it's a great time. I spent at one point just binging through all of them, and it was great. But
okay. So moving along here, Joel, will Missy actually be joining us, or is she going to?
I don't know. She has stuff going on for work right now, so
that's fine.
Maybe not. I'm not gonna pressure her. She did read it, which I was very surprised because she's much better read than I am, and normally my books are silly. So
well, I mean, you're married to her, so because we kind of left off last week, or I'm sorry, not last week, the week before, on a bit of a cliffhanger when we, kind of posed to her this particular challenge. You guys had been reading it. Yeah, you guys were reading one of her books, and at the last time we did our book episode, we wanted to have her read one of our books. So,
correct.
Can you give us a bit of an impression of how you think she took to it? Did she like it? Did she not like it? Did she?
The number one barrier for her reading this book was the turtle. She thought that was absolutely ridiculous and thought it's just a silly thing. But after getting into it, she said,
"Someone literally fell off the turtle."
They did.
Like,
It was awesome.
like it just like there was just I just
Didn't like it.
no, I didn't dislike it. It was a fun romp.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's exactly how I would describe it.
like right? Like
Are you gonna fit?
yeah, I do have to finish one thing.
Go finish it and then come back.
I heard my thing, but yeah,
Go.
I did like it. It was a fun romp. It was very like cute. Would I have picked it up on my own? Probably not. Would I finish all 7 million books? I don't know. Maybe I'll find a list of the best ones and go from there. But
So the one
If you're
thing.
gonna be joining us, I'll wait for your part a little bit later.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
In that case, Ben, why don't you start us off and tell us what you think of this book in a very brief sense? Like, do you enjoy this particular book within the Discworld series? Like, what is your particular favorite book in the Discworld series, maybe?
So this was so I tried to start like said earlier, there isn't like a perfect starting place for this book series, but Color of Magic's kind of like the one that everyone points to. It kind of like introduces all of the elements of the Discworld. It's probably one of the most outrageous series in terms of like the ones that are around. I highly enjoy this book. Later Rincewind novels I got kind of tired of, but I would say this isn't my favorite Discworld novel. My favorite Discworld novel is or novel series revolves around it's called the Guards novels, which is where the on Ankh-Morpork is the first creation of an actual city watch, aka police force, with this guy named Colonel Vimes, who is just this like burnt out alcoholic detective that like is just convinced that the only way to be like good as a policeman and as a member of the Night's Watch is to not get shivved by the Thieves Guild, or not get shivved by the like anyone in Ankh-Morpork. Eventually a man joins the Night's Watch who's a human man that was raised by dwarves and is convinced he is a dwarf, and he basically completely reforms the police service, but under Colonel Vimes' purview, and it's just hilarious as you see these sort of like basically you see Ankh-Morpork take a transformation as an actual police force is established, because during the Rincewind times it's this like lawless, like horrible rundown city run by thieves and con men, and as the series progresses it almost becomes this like dominating force within the actual Discworld, and I highly enjoyed that one. I think the first one is Guards, but I would have to look that up.
I think we're getting off topic since we're discussing the Color of Magic and
Yeah.
Discworld. Discworld itself is huge.
Yeah.
But
Jumping over to you, Joel, how do you like this particular book? Or rather, if you want, you could talk about the series.
I'll focus on the Rincewind series, which is a novella and 2 other books that on the movie are all encompassed.
Mm-hmm.
But the word "a romp" is the best way to put it. It is this fun little jaunt of like, why are we following this character? Why do we follow Two Flower? Sure, he's got a ton of money. And then Ben brings up a point where it is a corrupt city. There's a scene in the movie and in the book both where the head of the Thieves Guild and the head of the Assassins Guild are sitting there in broad daylight, middle of the day, having a conversation of, what about our agreement? No killing for money. No stealing for, don't kill the people for money. I won't steal from the people for...
That I kill.
Yeah. So, it's like, the one guy, you stick to robbing, you can't rob from the people you kill, and I can't kill the people I rob. And they're like, right, good day, we'll see you at the next town hall. catch up on the next meetings, you know, and everybody's fine with it.
Yeah,
and then go over to this place, you're gonna get stabbed a whole bunch.
And then you find out eventually that everyone basically just pays a fee to the Thieves Guild to not get robbed. And so as long as you're up on your, like, collections, you don't get stolen from.
Yeah. They're very open. If you're not going to get stabbed, you pay your fee to the Assassin's Guild, you pay your fee to the various guilds. The wizards are kind of just like these bookish nerds that are all these horribly conniving bastards that do nothing but plot on killing each other in order to get up the ladder.
Yeah. They basically are just like, They don't do anything for the city. They literally just like they're pretty much just like parasites that like act like they know a ton of magic, and most of what they do is just like kill each other and walk around in robes with stars and hats with stars on them and like frilly robes and stuff.
Because actual magic in this one takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's Ridgewood explains it takes a long period of time to study a spell and then chant and do the rituals to make it happen. So
and
the
he
whole
just learned his one spell.
and he accidentally the spell book called the Octavan is supposed to be the most dangerous spell book on the entirety of the disc.
Yeah, it's basically the 8 spells that like hold the world together, pretty much.
In this world, the number 8 is a very powerful number, and wizards cannot say it. So they refer to it as like 7 minus 1, 9 minus 2, 5 plus 3. And saying it, the only time it was said out loud was by the magic sword, who's like, why can't we say 8, which then immediately summoned the Soul Eater from the Temple of Baal-Shagrath, which was...
But wasn't just that, it was like a very, like, funny, subtle, like, you know, he's talking about how you can't say it, you know that word, it's 7 plus 1, or 10 minus 2, like, don't say that word, and it's dead silent, and then the sword's like, why can't we say 8? 8. And like, hear it echoing. And I did, like, I half read it, half audiobooked it, so it did really, like, the cast kind of made it come to life in new ways. It's just funny. And then he's like, shoot, I told you not to say 8. And then he's like, it's like 8. And it both, like, it bounces. It's, like, fun and free.
Yeah. I was just going through the Wikipedia page on the book just to kind of like refresh my memory on stuff, and there was a statement that was by one of the reviewers for when this book came out, and he stated, and I think this is hilarious because I think this is exactly how to describe this book, and he said it's one of those horrible antisocial books which impel the reader to buttonhole friends and quote bits at them and make them watch it and make them read it. And I think that's what it is, because it's so stupid, but it's like it's hilarious and it's clever and it's just like it makes me happy whenever I read them, because there's always something that I missed the last time that I like that I find hilarious the next time around.
What's the secret of the universe? What's the secret of life?
Yeah, it's 42. Come on.
42?
Yeah. Yeah.
The answer to the question of the life, universe, and everything. Yeah. 42.
42.
Yeah.
Yeah, because no one knows the question.
And then they find out at the end that the question is, what is 6 times 7?
So, Joel, going back to you, is this your favorite of the works?
I haven't. I would only encountered the stories. I have one other book that I haven't read yet here, but I've seen this one and then Going Postal, and they both have the same type of feel. Yeah. It's got a very I do love like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and they have the same type of feel, like unnecessary details that make no sense, but somehow add to the story. You know, I enjoyed this, and I will definitely read some more of his stuff because it is very, very campy. But as far as like, it's a difficult book to talk about because a lot of books you could be like, okay, you wake up in the morning, the main character wakes up, they go to a job, they have a crisis, they leave, blah blah blah. Not this book. This book, they kind of just find themselves in places. There's points where Rincewind's magic, because the spell wants to be said and doesn't want to die, will teleport him to random ass spots. So he'll just appear
when he's about to die.
Yeah, he's about to die. He'll just reappear somewhere else because the spell, which is one of the most powerful spells, is sentient and prevents him from writing any other spell by bullying other spells out of his head. Which, where do you go with a story like that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you take that seriously? What are you gonna do? It doesn't make any sense.
It's basically like the DM, like literally just hand waving stuff away, like literally just like
That's exactly what it is.
It's like a DM that doesn't want his characters to die, so like every time they're about to, he's like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. And speaking of death, Rincewind is a wizard, and so
And I sat.
he has to constantly be on a lookout for death itself, which is an actual entity that walks around and speaks in only capital letters.
Voiced by Christopher Lee in all of the shows.
Right. And
This is a side note, but there you can pre-order on Audible a new production of it.
I
and
know.
it's like,
I'm so excited. They're redoing the audiobooks for a bunch of these, like the most popular ones, with like Andy
Bill
Serkis and who else?
Bill Nye. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there's like
I'm super excited. Yeah.
yeah, basically all of like the best like VAs and like crazy good actors are like came together for this project, and they're voicing or doing the like. It's a huge thing Penguin Books is doing, and it's for the 50th anniversary, right? So
Yeah, I think so. Sorry.
Yeah.
it's okay.
Digress.
now that,
You should give your...
now that you're here, I want to get your opinion on, because you're the one we're really here for. This is your kind of show. Like, what did you think? Did this get you into fantasy as a larger sort of thing, or are you kind of like still kind of touch and go about the whole thing?
I take book recommendations. Sometimes it takes me like years to read them, kind of like Good Omens. But
I gave her Good Omens on our first date ever, which was at a bookstore.
it took me like 3 years to read it. But guess who finished it, and guess who still has not finished the book I gave him?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, but I started reading it right away.
Excuse
You
me.
said no. You said it's quietly beautiful. Yes, I'm aware. And it's just people sitting talking at a table. That's as far as I made it. Like,
Experience. Neither here nor there. But so I will take recommendations, but as a whole,
it will
like,
take 5 years to get to them.
I would, if we didn't have this, I would have kind of struggled through it, like I struggled through Neverwhere. They're like, Joel and I continue to have this argument because it's the relationships that drive it for me, and generally speaking, the romantic relationships. Like Rincewind, like this was fun, it was adorable, and at the end, what's the barbarian's name?
Run.
And he married like
the babe.
her dad. Like that was hilarious, and I loved it. And I did see the little piece at the end of the mini series. That was one of the things that stuck in my head when Joel was watching it.
You'd like the watch novels, because there actually is like a romantic thing that like goes through the whole thing.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I laughed at the end when he was like, "Are you sure you can keep up with her?" And he's like, "I don't know," like, and he didn't understand what he meant, but it was cute.
Yeah, we'll see if she's up to it. He said that in the movie. I'll have to see if she's up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it was good. It was a fun, like I said, jaunt, right?
It's like one of those books you can like crush in an afternoon sort of thing. So it's like, it's not like a huge commitment or anything. You can just like, bam. It's like, they're almost like dime store novel type.
Would you agree with that though? Like,
not that bad, but like.
no. Ben, hold on. Let's
Sorry.
see. would you agree with that? Like, would you say that like Ben's assessment is correct, or like?
It's easy to read. It's fun. It reminded me a lot of like The Hobbit. Like it was like this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It was very. He's like, don't talk about that.
Hold on here.
Like
The Hobbit was much better laid out. There was definitely a journey in The Hobbit.
Yeah, but like it was a very like this and then this and then this.
Yeah,
and
this one was. This one was like a random encounters that somebody's like, let's just storyboard it together.
That's what made it fun.
Yes.
Like, because you didn't know what to expect, and like you know, all of a sudden like death would come out, and then the narrator would tell you something weird about the damn turtle. And then,
So honestly, this one is one of the worst ones about the turtle because of the whole like thing, what happens at the end. This is
funniest. I was like, the turtle barely weighs into it. The turtle's in every single book, and then I'm like, read this one. It's called The Life Cycle of the Turtle, and I mean, at the end of the entire series of the Rincewind series, you end up going to like a star, which is this turtle nursery. Like it's all about the turtle.
I will say,
like going postal, nothing to do with the turtle. It's cute.
It didn't bother me as much. Like once I got over it, like I accepted the turtle for what it was.
The world.
You accepted the turtle.
And I just let it go.
Accepted the turtle.
Accepted the great Arturine, who I'm getting a tattoo of next month.
Their obsession with trying to find out what gender it is. Like,
I know.
And then it was like, baby,
But that didn't serve any purpose.
None.
That's the whole thing. It's like, this is why you can't complain to The Hobbit. The Hobbit, you cannot take a piece of The Hobbit out and have the same story. You can be like, we're going to go to the temple, and nothing would change. The story is still the same. Like,
yeah, but they were fun. Like, it was a fun representation of.
And dragons are imaginary.
And dragons are imaginary. Like,
So it was very digestible then for you.
Yeah, for someone who doesn't do fantasy, and there's some, like, what is it, Ursula Le Guin. I've tried like The Left Hand of Darkness, and there's one other one that's kind of short. But like those were harder for me, right? Like the ones that are higher fantasy, like they're harder for me to get into. But this one was fun and British and quirky and all of like. Had I not watched Doctor Who, maybe I wouldn't have, been as open to it. Had I not, promised to read it, maybe I would have continued to let it sit down there. But yeah.
It feels like, it almost feels, the books a lot of times almost feel like a Doctor Who episode, because it's just like.
If the TARDIS showed up, I would not be surprised.
No.
Yeah, if the Doctor's like, and here we go back in the bullport, I'd be like, I fucking knew it! Because it is. It's not so much the newer episodes of Doctor Who, but definitely like the third or fourth Doctor definitely would have fit in. No, second two was pretty campy.
It's like if you just like.
Second and fourth were definitely. The third was stuck on Earth. He couldn't be so. Yeah. But yeah, it did. It flowed like a Doctor Who episode because it made there's parts of it that made very little sense.
Yeah.
Well, Terry Pratchett actually wrote for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yes, he did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In fact, he wrote during, I believe it was the fourth Doctor era.
That's
Tom Baker. Tom Baker was that one, and that is all of it felt like Tom Baker. Like if he would have just shown up, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a cameo in there of a Tom Baker-ish character.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Terry Pratchett wrote some of the most infamous episodes of Doctor Who ever.
Infamous.
Including, I believe, the one where Romana regenerates, which, by the way, don't ever mention at a convention center.
Why?
It asks a lot of questions, and there's a lot of like nerd rage about it, because basically within the span of like several minutes, Romana just kind of like, because she's one of the only companions who was also a Time Lord, so she had the capability to regenerate. And what she does is like within the space of 5 minutes, she tries on like 6 or 7 different identities. It's almost like she's going back into the back room and sticking her finger in a light socket so that she can just die and like get a new.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she tries them on like they're. It's like the fucking costume changes for her. It's like just yeah. Anyway.
Isn't it 13? Isn't that the maximum? She's like, it's fine.
Yeah, apparently she's just like, whatever.
You know, there's Doctor Who is in Star Trek.
Yes.
Yeah.
I dropped the line.
No, he just pops in Star Trek. That's awesome.
That's a line right there. That is a hard line.
The original one, right?
I'm gonna be upset now.
No, actually, you're right. I did see the newer movie.
Oh, look at you.
Benedict Cumberbatch was in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, Dan, with you.
Shall we go ahead and take our break, and then when we come back, we'll jump into spoiler territory?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. Before we get going again, I want to say thank you for joining us. And if you're looking for our D&D content, you can join us this Wednesday at 4:30 when we will be rejoining our campaign and starting that up again. And if you want to like play along with us, one of the things that you can do is that you can get your very own dice set from tabletoploot.com. Tabletoploot.com is my favorite place to shop when it comes to getting dice. Not only will they ship me 4 sets of dice minimum for free every month after paying $25 for the subscription, but they're all high quality dice. They're all very unique and awesome. And you can actually go to tabletoploot.com right now and put in the code NOL15 for 15% off of any of their dice in their store. That's NOL15 for Nerds of Legend 15. And you can go ahead and get your set of dice, and hopefully you can join us when it comes to playing our little game.
We had some pretty sparkly, chaosy ones this month.
Oh, yes. Jumping back to Color of Magic. Missy, why don't I start with you this time? Ultimately, this probably wasn't your thing. You aren't big on the whole like high fantasy.
Yeah.
You like the more romance sort of thing, and that's fine. But would you recommend this book to, say, for example, other people if you knew that they were into high fantasy and maybe had never heard of Terry Pratchett? Is this a good place for someone to kind of pick it up?
I mean, no disrespect, but would you consider this high fantasy?
I mean, I personally wouldn't, but
Yeah, okay.
No, I would also
There's some
No.
that I've. It's a good.
Low fantasy, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good entry point for someone who's looking to get into the genre, but like a lot of like the names or the world, that intense world building, that's really hard for me to visualize. But this was like.
Yeah.
Like I could picture it. Like
Yeah.
it was very like the names were hard for me to remember, but like that's just because they were like I listened to it before I read it, so then like it just didn't stick the same. But I would recommend it to someone. It's fun. Like it's just like if you're looking for something serious, you're not gonna get it here. But that's not what it's about, in my opinion.
do you feel it does a good job in trying to balance itself? Like, obviously, we know it's very comedically driven, but would you say that it's maybe a little too heavy-handed in that respect?
No. Well, and I read like Good Omens. I did finally bite the bullet and read that before the series. Series came out. But like, so I was kind of prepared for that. Like that one, I would say had more of a balance from that. But I wouldn't say. I think this was just fun. Like, and it was meant to be fun and silly. And if you went into it wanting something else, then you'd be kind of disappointed.
Good take. Ben, jumping up to you for a minute. How do you feel about this particular story? Do you feel like its ending was good, bad? Like, would you recommend this to people? I mean, if you kind of like maybe thought they had, like, is this something that you would go to people and be like, oh, you haven't read this?
I recommend Discworld to people all the time. I don't necessarily recommend this one, but I definitely recommend it as a starting point because it kind of introduces all sort of like the aspects of the world in a really good way. All of them do if it becomes relevant. Like that was the really nice thing about a lot of the books in this universe is like he doesn't write the books in a way that he expects you to know everything that he's like ever written. So it's like
alone,
you can start at any point in with any of his novels and know what's going on. There's no like, oh, if you didn't start at this one, you're gonna be lost. I mean, you might miss out on some of like the wink references or whatever, but you're not going to be like not have any idea what's going on. But as far as this book is concerned, it is annoying, a little bit annoying how the book ends because it is a bit of a cliffhanger. A lot of the other books kind of like basically resolve themselves by the end of it. This one was an obvious like setup for the next book. So
it's also the first one, right? Like,
yeah.
So you're like, he's still finding his footing. He's still like, whereas later in the series, there's a million books, right? Like,
so yeah. So most people.
Rincewind series.
No, it is his first book that he wrote, but
is it?
yeah. So he recommends so like most people, because of its it's like place in the timeline of the whole series, recommend this one as your first one. But the book that most people recommend for people that Terry Pratchett actually recommended people to start was actually Sorcery, which is actually the third book in the Discworld series, or in the Rincewind series, which is interesting. But that's where Terry Pratchett recommended you start. But but a lot of people like chronological and having the characters be introduced in a certain order. But
fun fact: Terry Pratchett actually said that David Tennant was the best Doctor.
Oh dang!
Oh really? We were just talking about that yesterday. He said, because I when you're watching Nine, when you're watching Christopher Eccleston,
by number,
like you're watching him and you're brought into the world and everything, and like you're like not ready for him to go, but then once you watch it back again, you're like, yeah, that's fine.
We can discuss Doctor Who a different time. Yes. Ad nauseam.
Perhaps Doctor Who will be our next episode.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, I would happily do Doctor Who. I've been in a Doctor Who mood, so. But we'd have to pick a time, like which one. Because there's so many iterations. Like, we can't just be like, let's talk about 60 years of Doctor Who in 1 hour episode. Like, we'd have to be like, no, we're going to talk about the first time.
We'd need a whole podcast for that. Like, we'd have to.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could literally fill a podcast with that. But, I mean, we could break it up into, like, modern and classic.
Right. At least a very broad overview.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, at least then, we could talk about like, whatever.
We'd like to get off topic because I think we're all leaning towards Doctor Who right now. Like we're all seem to be like in the mindset, like being like, no, screw the rest of this nonsense. Let's pass over Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and go to the culmination of all this weirdness right into Doctor Who.
Well, the thing is, this has always been my particular view when it comes to Terry Pratchett. I like the Discworld series for what it is, in the sense that it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like you can, it's digestible. It's very like, oh, I pick up a book, I read it, and then I put it back down, and then I never think about it again.
For someone who doesn't read it, you can do that. Like
exactly, yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I said, sorry. Like I said, a lot of his books you can basically like crush them in like an evening, or like they're like 4-hour reads. Yeah.
They're very digestible. So, but I always seem to want more, and see that's where I kind of think about Doctor Who, because in many ways I think of Doctor Who kind of like a Terry Pratchett novel series, but done in such a way where there's more story to it. There's more like of a sense of finality to it, if that makes any sense, because every series has a showrunner, and the showrunner usually tries to connect all these different strands together and whatnot by the end of their particular run. And I don't know, I find Doctor Who a little bit more enjoyable for those reasons, because while I think Terry Pratchett's story writing is good for what it is, it always leaves me wanting something a little bit different.
That's Neil Gaiman. I have tried almost his entire series. Like, I think the
only person I know that could be like, I don't like him as an author. Read everything he wrote, but do not like him.
Like, I love like
he doesn't like him.
That's what it is. That is incorrect. I like the theory behind a lot of his books. there's a lot of potential, but when it comes to the execution, something about it, the only exception is Sandman. I did really like the Sandman series. Like,
The Sandman series is pretty goddamn good.
yeah, but that's the only exception. American Gods, Neverwhere.
See, I really liked American Gods. I haven't read a whole lot of Neil Gaiman, but
How do you feel about Coraline?
It was okay. Like it just okay. Like the Graveyard Book just okay.
I find it hilarious that he tested that book with it. He got told that it wouldn't be a good children's book, so he tested it on his daughter, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I love it." And then he found out like 10 years later, she's like, "Oh, I was terrified, but I didn't want to say I didn't like it."
That's amazing.
I thought it made a better animated feature. But anyway, okay, so getting, I suppose, back to Discworld and why, because in all honesty, like, I think Discworld is okay. But I do, I don't know, I have my own hangups with it. But it's good to hear that you enjoyed it for what it was. And I do agree with you guys that, like, it is something that you can kind of, like, just kind of hand someone in a store and be like, oh, you should read this. And they not have to, like, worry about, you know, them having to, like, get a bunch of backstory or anything. Because this does a good job with the setup.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been super, like, on board with its final execution. You know what I'm saying? Like, it seems a little messy.
I feel like he always struggled with finishing a book, which I think me and Joel have touched on a couple times. It always felt like he had this, like, word count that he was trying to get to, and then all of a sudden he reaches his word count, and then he's like, oh crap, I gotta finish the book, you know, like, because he wants to keep it, because he wants to keep each of those ones a certain certain length or whatever. Like, he doesn't, because a lot of times you see with authors, like, as they're, like, continuing through a series, like, the first, like, you know, you can see it in Harry Potter, you know, it's like the first one's like this big, and then the next one's a little bit bigger, and the next one's a little bit bigger, and then all of a sudden you have the fourth book, which is like a freaking Bible, and then the fifth one happens, and it's, you know, like, I think,
You know what, Terry
This is the fifth one.
yeah,
Terry Pratchett always reminded me of the guy, like, okay, if any of you have ever worked in, like, a game store, or if you've ever, like, run a particular game at, like, a convention or whatnot, Terry Pratchett, to me, is the kid who comes up to you about their great D&D story. They've got this amazing D&D story they have to tell you.
I mean, that's how the books read. It's like a recount of their wacky adventure.
Yeah. But then,
Or like
like,
a child telling you your dream, which is what I got on the way home.
well, sort of. But Terry Pratchett is that kind of a nerd where he'll come up to you and he'll tell you about his D&D story, and then he won't know how or, like, where to actually finish it. So he just keeps going and telling you about more of their D&D adventures. Like, he'll give you a nice little chunk, and you'll get a kind of a chuckle out of it, but then, like, he'll keep going.
You're saying he's socially awkward in print, is what you're saying?
Yes.
If he hadn't predated, like, D&D, I would assume that he was just, like, transcribing his campaigns. You know what I mean? Like, like that's what it feels like. Is it feels like he's transcribing his D&D campaign onto print.
I feel
But
personally judged at this moment.
I'm not judging you at all. I've read your chapters, and I don't think that you do that. I think you give it a life of its own.
I want to say in, like, mid-70s.
When did D&D start?
And when did D&D start?
73.
He's like, I would like to say, in the year of our Lord, August 15th at 4:45 is when the first dice hit the table.
So they basically sprung into being at the same time. You switched your camera again, Brian.
Oh, yeah, sorry. There we go, better.
They basically sprang into being at the same time, but
I don't know. I hate to say it. I'm all about fantasy, and there's a couple parts that I really like. But a lot of this was silly to the point where it was disjointed for me.
I love it.
But that was the point.
I love the world.
Seriously, like you just had to accept it for what it was.
There was points where it got for me that it's like it felt like an and then story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're at a floating mountain, and then we were fighting on hook boots, and then it turned out dragons were imaginary, and then we fell into a boat, and then we fell off the world, and that's what it sounded like. Because each chapter was like him telling the story to somebody, and they're like, and then what happened? And then so he just wrote exactly what happened. And
see, and I think so, like, because you haven't read a lot of them, you've only read a couple, right? So
no, I've only read this. This is the first one I've seen two movies and this.
I've read 75% of these books. Color of Magic is the worst offender for this. For what you're talking about.
I read Good Omens and loved it.
Yeah. So like if you want something that's like I said, every other one of these books, there's a, there is no cliffhanger. That's
what really got me. Like,
yeah,
not only was there a cliffhanger, there was an introduction of a whole new group of things that came in it. The species that only live off the edge of the world, seeing the turtle, like everything, and all of this stuff. You brought into it. And it's like the last page. You're like, why would you bring this much garbage in here?
Obviously.
So in my opinion, as someone who's read a bunch of the books,
it happens all the time.
In my opinion,
never mind. You're right. All right. Apparently, I don't read enough.
Okay.
YA.
But this isn't YA. But I digress. In my opinion, as someone who's read like most of the books, you would like the Watch series, or no, you would like the Going Postal series, Joel. With
I love the movie.
With what's his name? I can't think of his name. With the con man.
The whole thing, like he came into the mountain of possessed letters, and he had to deliver them, and his only way to get workers was to hire golems.
Yeah. So if you love the show, the book is even better. Like, you need to read. It's called the Industrial Revolution series. I'll tell you the name of the first one. Missy, if you're at all interested in any more Discworld books, there's two to choose from. One is the Guard series. There's a romantic thing that goes on in it, and it's great because it's basically like this super eccentric chick and then this like angry alcoholic detective, the super eccentric pseudo dragon tamer lady who's like super rich, basically like whips the alcoholic detective dude into shape, and all of a sudden next thing he's the captain of the guard, and it's hilarious because he's like, holy fuck, I love her, and all of a sudden I have no choice but to get married. Like she basically like maneuvers him into the point where she's like, we're getting married now, right? He's like, yes.
You're with me, bitch.
Yeah.
If we're
or there's the Witches series, which
I believe it falls to Missy.
Oh no, but I'm not saying for the next one. I'm saying I'm not assuming that we're gonna continue with Discworld with our book stuff.
I feel that Discworld itself has permeated this episode and been incredibly idiosyncratic. Like I feel like we've gone all over the place with this one.
Well, Discworld is kind of
to a book recommendation.
Is that not fitting for Discworld though? The fact that it starts at one place and just goes everywhere.
Yeah. So
is all over the place.
So Missy, there's also another series that's called the Witches series, which it is based upon a coven of witches in a far off town not in Ankh-Morpork, and it is their shenanigans, and they're basically based off of the Shakespearean witches from like Love Bubble, Toil and Trouble.
Macbeth.
Yeah. So, like, that shit It's
Yes.
good.
The second one sounds good. Like, I don't want to say that, like, I only read books that have relationships in them. Like,
No. So
it's what I gravitate towards, but, like, I will, like, I do read other things.
just even just like read a plot synopsis of the first one, of the first Witches book, and
With vampires, I'm in.
yeah, no, like there, it's basically like it's a satire of all like witch stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like it's great because it's like it's basically the whole point of it is like about being a witch is it's all about like about wearing the hat and acting like you're a witch. It's basically like you know it's the modern day equivalent of like you can get in anywhere if you put on a neon vest with and held a clipboard and have a hard hat on. It's that but with witches, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so wrapping this up, what do you guys think is a good book for you guys to talk about next? Something that maybe either you guys have familiarity with, or something that you guys can all agree upon to kind of like read and come back on. Like, Missy, you were the one who got recommended Discworld. Do you have a recommendation for this time?
I don't. Joel asked me earlier, and honestly, I've just been busy with work, and I haven't had time to think in it. So I will see this recommendation and pick up on the next one. How about that?
All right, that's fair enough. Well,
So I've got.
Oh, you want me to recommend something?
Yes.
Go for it.
Well, I do have one particular author that I wouldn't mind plugging.
It's called the DM's Guide.
No, not quite.
Masquerade.
Not quite. This one's a little bit more. Actually, you know, I don't know. Maybe this might be a good kind of like marriage of both Missy's style and also Joel's. This one is Ashes of Onyx.
Oh shit, he had it ready already. I've heard of Seth. I haven't read the book. I think I've read some Seth Skorkowski stuff on like cause he does a lot of D&D stuff, doesn't he? Or no?
He does the Mountain of Daggers series, which
Okay.
is very much D&D like in the sense that it's, you know, kind of that noir fantasy sort of feel to it.
Does he do like a YouTube thing?
He does also have a YouTube
Okay,
channel.
that's where I've seen his name. Yeah.
I want to time out just 1 second. We put Brian on the spot, like seemingly out of nowhere.
No, that's
like,
Brian.
hey,
Brian is prepared for maybe all the time.
out of like nowhere, like, hey, like, oh yeah, you're like, oh.
I already have it on my lap.
No, he always does that shit. He's always done that shit. Like before, be like, oh, I don't know if I could run a game for D&D. Oh, all my dice are here, and I happen to have them. No, that's just him. Are we agreeing on that one?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, yeah, I think Ashes of Onyx would be a nice kind of midway point between you guys. It's got Cthulhu and horror.
Oh, fuck yeah. Sorry. Alright, Cthulhu.
I don't want to talk anymore about it. I don't want a backstory or anything. I want to know nothing about this.
I'm flying and blind.
Too bad. I'm reading the first 3 lines of the fucking back because it's amazing.
No, that's fine. I mean, like, I don't want anybody to talk to me about it during this. I'm gonna get it for Kindle and read it today.
They stole her magic. They killed her friends. Nothing in the multiverse will stop her quest for revenge.
The cover does look like something that I would just like casually stroll through the like store and be like, I'm in. Like, no, I'm in.
Yeah.
It's classified in paranormal and urban fantasy. That's right up your alley. Yeah. All right. Well.
All right. I already got it on Audible.
I'm gonna get the book and read it in Kindle.
My time is more easily spent by doing it in audio book form, so that's how I consume books anymore because I don't have time to
Because you can do it at work.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Seth Skorkowski actually narrates the audiobook.
I need to look at. I know that name from somewhere. It must be from YouTube, but no, I'm curious.
Yeah, he's got a tremendously successful YouTube, but he's also a really accomplished writer. And I think honestly, The Ashes of Onyx is probably his best book, although he has several others. But this one feels more self-contained.
Oh, he's done a bunch of D&D like things. That's why I've seen him pop up.
That's true. He has also written for both D&D, for Call of Cthulhu, and also for Traveler.
No, but he's like done like stuff that's like DM tips and stuff like that. That's how I've seen him.
Yep.
Yeah.
He again, his YouTube channel is incredibly successful. He's done a bunch of stuff regarding DM tips, player tips. He's done module reviews. He's done entire reviews of systems and whatnot. If you guys haven't actually checked out Seth Skorkowski's YouTube channel, I do highly recommend it. And again, if you have any interest in awesome books that he's read, the books that he's wrote, then yeah, his Mountain of Daggers series is a wonderful for D&D nerds alike. But he also has his Valdekin series, which is urban fantasy and talking swords, and then of course he's got Ashes of Onyx. So yeah,
I'm in. I already bought it.
Yeah, I'll go buy one of my Kindles right now and then read it on my phone.
All right.
Well, then I suppose in 2 weeks' time we'll come back and we'll figure out what you guys thought of Ashes of Onyx.
All right, and next week's topic is, what are you thinking for next week when we're on? Are we going to start Doctor Who?
Maybe we should do Doctor Who.
Did we want to do Doctor Who, or did we still want to stick with Spider-Man?
Oh, yeah, we did say Spider-Man. We'll do Spider-Man.
We'll wait till Missy can join us for the Doctor Who episodes.
All right,
I
cool.
have some things to say about Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire.
Do you want to join us on Mondays?
About Spider-Man.
Okay, you know what? We have 5 minutes late. We have 5 minutes left. I want to hear your hot takes on Spider-Man. Give it to me.
I'm just teasing. We
You like the whole like emo haircut, Tobey Maguire, like Venom Spider-Man? You like the whole, like?
Well, I only
dancing scene with that.
Yes. Well,
That was his favorite.
no, my favorite part was when he was trying to learn how to use the like spider web in the very first one, and he just like goes like that, and then that. Like, and we used to like when I was like 8th grade or whatever when it came out. And we used to just like do that to each other. So like that is my fondest memory of Spider-Man. But otherwise,
Not the upside down.
Yeah, it's just, isn't it just like a scene of the sky and it's just his hand popping out and him just doing random gestures and he's like...
yeah, just random gestures.
Actually,
Yeah,
fun fact about that particular scene, when he actually does that hand gesture, he is motioning in sign language for "I love Spider-Man."
Oh, really? Well, I know
Yeah.
like is "I love you."
Yeah, exactly. But like when he does like this,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fun.
It's cute.
Yeah, I
it's
think I only saw the
interesting Easter egg.
I think I saw the first two, the one with James Franco, and then I don't remember what the middle one was, and then I saw this last one. Those are the only ones I've seen.
That's Far Away from Home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
that was
No,
No Way Home.
no, she's talking about Spider-Man 2, the original Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. And that was...
I saw the first trilogy.
With Sandman and Doc Ock, I believe.
Yeah.
Doc Ock was in the second one.
Venom.
No, I don't think it was
No.
Sandman. The second one was like the octopus, right? Wasn't
Doc
it the
Ock.
octopus and then the Green
Yeah.
Lantern.
Sandman was the third one.
Not the Green Lantern.
Green Goblin.
Goblin.
What are you getting all like weird for? Like, you know,
It's like the nerds.
Because usually when someone accidentally says the wrong name on this show, you jump down their throats. Joel. So she was like prepping for the verbal lashing. She's like, please don't hurt me, I said the wrong name.
I'm sorry.
Green
Goblin.
Goblin. And then the last one that Aunt May died in. Those are my biggest takeaways.
Venom.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
We can talk about that later.
Yep. All right, guys. I think we're coming up on our time here. Brian, do you want to close us out?
Yes, I do. I want to thank everyone again for joining us. If you guys haven't checked out our previous episodes on Batman, or also on what was the last book?
Discovery
of
Witches.
Witches. That's right. Yeah, Discovery of Witches. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe both of those are currently on Spotify. Is that correct, Joel?
And Apple and iTunes.
Okay.
We will have it on Google Podcast this week as well. And the next episode, which is Discovery of Witches, will be on Friday. We put on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you are able to get your podcasts on Friday.
But
Okay, so
Yes.
yes,
Right now.
every Friday if you want to check out our podcast form. But you can also check out plenty of our episodes on our YouTube page. We are Nerds of Legend on YouTube. If you see what you, if you like what you see, you can look at some of our D&D episodes. All of those are on our YouTube at the moment. Correct, Ben?
Mm-hmm.
buy dice.
And buy dice, Missy says.
Yeah.
TabletopLoot.com. NOL15.
Yep. And also, Nerds of Legend is now on Twitter at Nerds of Legend G1 on Twitter. So, hope to see you on Wednesday.
Thank you all for joining us.
Bye-bye.